Greetings, Commanders. My name is Beck, and welcome to another episode of the Briefing Room. Today, we have a wonderful, special, dear friend and guest with us, Rev Deuce, content creator. How are you, Rev?
I am doing well. How are you doing, Beck?
I'm doing so well. It's neat to see you on this side of things. For those who don't know, Rev is actually the reason I got into playing Star Trek Fleet Command, and so we have a pretty good relationship there. But that's how I got into the game. But Rev, how did you get into the game?
Okay, so I actually got into the game when it launched back in November 2018. And just being a huge Star Trek fan from birth, I was just like, well, mobile Star Trek game. And funny enough for me, I've always kind of liked mobile gaming because I was really big into Clash of Clans. And oof, anybody that remembers that era of mobile gaming, that was a big deal. So found Star Trek Fleet Command, just kind of came something that I immediately fell into and fell in love with. And it combined a couple of things that I liked. It had that multiplayer online community, but also that 4X style expand, exterminate. So I got to be a player and really grow my own system, my own base and everything, but also interact with a lot of people inside of Star Trek. So immediately I was pretty hooked.
So when you started making content for the game, did you start that right away?
Kind of yes and no. So I had actually been doing contests before Star Trek Fleet Command. I worked as a sports journalist with The Athletic. So I also had a YouTube and podcast with football stuff, working with the NFL, working with scouting, stuff like that. And when we started the game, I just did a separate YouTube channel, kind of like for my alliance, just kind of goof off, make videos, a little bit tips to help my alliance mates as we're learning the game back then. And then it just kind of grew from there. But probably, I think my first Star Trek Fleet Command video is somewhere in February of 2019, January, somewhere in there.
So you started on YouTube with content creation for Star Trek Fleet Command, correct?
I did, yeah, because I already had the understanding of YouTube from the football side of things. I just kind of segued and just started doing two at one time. So it ended up working out fine for me, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, YouTube is where I started, where a lot of people seem to start on Twitch these days.
How would you say you approach both of those sides of things, YouTube versus Twitch?
YouTube, I try to keep mostly informative, a little bit of humor here and there, but it's more of like an educational thing. It's sharing Star Trek while also sharing the game, good things about the game, bad things about the game. All of it is just more of a, edifying the, populace. Whereas Twitch is more of kind of get to know Rev as Rev who plays video games. So it's a little bit of a different style. Both of them, I think, are unique and fun in their own ways, but definitely very different.
I'm going to lay to the side a little bit the Star Trek Fleet Command talk, and I want to hear about Rev and your background with Star Trek in general. Like, where did your love for Star Trek begin?
So, love for Star Trek began as a child because my father loved Star Trek. And, one of my earliest memories is watching The Next Generation. Now, I'm 33, so I'm a little bit younger than some of our viewers. Don't make that laugh. But, we have a lot of people in this game who grew up with the original series and the movies, and a lot of that came out before I was even born. So for me, it was as a toddler, there's a picture of me watching The Next Generation, in diapers, staring up at those super old TVs that were made of wood on the outside and stuff, coming home after school after football practice. There would be this channel, which I don't think exists anymore, called Spike TV. But right when I got
remember
home
Spike.
after football, they had Star Trek playing. It was DS9 and The Next Generation. They did a back-to-back episode. And then, of course, remember Enterprise growing up. So I've enjoyed most of the franchise since it came out.
Mhm.
And I've been doing that since I was a kid.
What are the things that kind of stick out the most to you about playing the game? Is it because it's Star Trek? Is it the type of gameplay? Is it the community? What are the things that stand out to you?
So the reason I got into the game was the IP, was Star Trek. The reason I stayed was because of the style of game, this 4X strategy game, expand, exploit, exterminate. This whole style is something I've really enjoyed. It's like taking a real-time strategy game, mixing it with an MMO, and I've always kind of enjoyed those style of games, so I naturally gravitate towards them. And then there's just the enjoyment of seeing the game progress and what gets added that's really fresh. Because I played Star Trek Online when it came out, over a decade ago now. And it's cool because if you're watching Star Trek Picard this season, you'll notice a ship in that series that actually was created for that game. And it's really cool to see things like, games and, just general how the community itself can influence, the show as it continues to grow and expand. And I really love that aspect as well. And, can't wait to see maybe Star Trek Fleet Command has something that goes into, Star Trek one day.
Not where I thought you were going with it. I won't lie.
Where do you think I was going?
I thought there was going to be quite a bit more like community tie in there because you are so tight knit in the Star Trek Fleet Command community.
Yeah, the community is huge, but
Yeah.
I have found that just my personality, when I get into something that I'm interested in, I tie into that community, and then the community aspect always makes me enjoy more. And I say this all the time, and this is not meant to be like anything offensive to say like game design, but nobody stays in a game 4 or 5 years because of the content. Like it doesn't mean that new content can't come out and it can't be fun. I mean, you play Diablo, which is on like season 247.
Starting season 28.
It's still Diablo, though. And there's got to be something more that continues to draw you back, right? And oftentimes that's not the content, it's the community. So the community plays a huge role. But for me, in terms of like what got me here and what made me fall in love with it, it was definitely Star Trek.
Yeah. What are some of the things that have stuck out to you regarding this update, and maybe some things that you're a fan of, maybe some things maybe not so much a fan of? Would love to hear your opinion, Rev.
Yeah, look, I've loved that the Borg has gotten revisited because, a lot of games now do the whole battle pass structure. Fun FTFC trivia for those who are, newer to the game compared to me. This is actually the first time we ever tried the battle pass thing. I say we, I don't work for Scope. Was the Borg 3 years ago. So to have it revisited and get an update is really good. It's always nice to see old content kind of get a little bit of a facelift and add some things to it. There are some things I love about it. I really like the early Talios refinery. I like the new ship. Everybody that knows me and my play style, very much the pirate going around OPC hunting. And the Talios is fantastic for that. It's a huge upgrade. There's some aspects that are kind of, like I remember talking to Eco before this was going live. I'm like, dude, this whole launch an armada to launch another armada, not a huge fan of. That's when I feel like it needs some, tweaking and adjustment before you see more engagement. But overall, I think one thing I love about these past 2 months was finally refocusing on some of the older content and bringing it forward. And that helps the new players that I talked about before because they didn't get to experience that in the beginning. You never got to experience the Borg.
No, I didn't.
And then it gives people who've been doing it for a long time reason to go back and enjoy it. So I do like this, mix of adding new, but also, freshening up some of the things that we've already had in the game.
Absolutely. Moving forward, what are you looking forward to as this arc kind of comes to a close in the next week or so?
It's always, interesting. I always say that the busiest part of my month is launch day. So the Tuesday, whenever we launch, is my business. And kind of like, Eco and you, sometimes I'll pull a full all-nighter to get stuff ready and push stuff out. But then there comes, as we get towards the end, it's both good and bad. Like the week before an arc ends, I'm doing stuff like I've been in my Discord, I've been in YouTube and Facebook today, going through and trying to gauge player sentiment. One thing that I did this year is release a grading rubric so that we could give a little bit better, accurate feedback to Scopely based on what players think. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now. Is like, okay, what did everybody enjoy? What did y'all not enjoy? Was it acceptable to have the back-to-back spin events, for example? Was it okay that we did the Armada styles like they did? And what did y'all think about the leaderboards and the actual content and the Talios sourcing? Is everybody excited about getting a free ship if you're one of those 6%ers in 8 days, which Scopely had never done before. Scopely had never given away a ship that quickly. So what was the good? What was the bad? And that's going to be an entire week before I make my grading video, which is then sent out to everybody who wants to participate in that survey. And then we get feedback. So, it's doing that while at the same time, like, well, we got to make a video on the new officers to explain how they work because we have a new function now, Assimilate, which first time in 4 years, we've had burning, hull breach, and morale. Same. Nothing's changed there for several years. Now we have a new one. So we've got to make current content as well as, spend weeks prepping. And then I'm also doing a Picard season 3 episode 1 review episode coming out. So again, it's a it really helps to be very similar to you in that I'm very structured, very organized. I need lists, and it's pretty specific what I'm doing at any given time at any given day. And as far as what I'm looking forward to in the game, it's I think as a player, because one thing that could be difficult as a content creator is you get so caught up in being a content creator that you don't always get to either enjoy or not enjoy the game as a player.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, just taking a step back and looking at this game as a player, and I'm hoping to have more conversations with the team about things like bug fixes and why is there lag. And we had a problem this morning that there was an update and now people got logged out of their accounts. Why does stuff like that happen? And not in like a negative, like darn scopely way, but in a learning how these things happen, so I can find a way to be a better content creator to help players and then also help Scopely at the same time, because I'm somewhere in the middle, right? Like I don't work for y'all, I work for the players, but we definitely work together.
It's a neat little dynamic that we've got going on working together.
And it goes both ways too, because there are times where I'm constantly having to remind that my community is not the entire game. And we look at things like last month, and I remember talking to the head of game design over last month, and just like, sir, how could you do this with the Vidar? Right? Like, this is a pointless grind. Everybody's done this already, and then we come to find out that a small portion of the game had actually finished that arc. So then there's that other side of things of talking to Scopely to learn how things are from your end, and then what can I take back to the players to help them better understand why the game is going in the direction that it is, because sometimes things make sense but it needs to be explained, right?
Right.
And that's part of it as well. But then there's also times where we have to get out the good old pitchforks and flames and get things fixed. So there's a balance to be had on both sides.
Now, Rev, you briefly mentioned the addition of the Talios. So would you say that that has been a positive addition to the game overall?
I would think, one, just as we talked about, updating older content is typically a good thing, right? It's pretty hard to find a negative about revisiting old content, and it's definitely something the players have asked for a long time. There are some suggestions I would make about how to make it better, particularly as it scales up. One of the things that we've talked about, because if you follow people like me and DJ, we're huge math nerds, and you look at the inert probe cost, which is the main currency you need to upgrade and then eventually get to the armadas and stuff like that. Coming right out the gate, the Talios actually has a better inert probe to charge probe ratio in terms of how many it takes to turn one into the other, until you get to about tier 8, and then it kind of like falls off the face of the earth. And I think the expectation there from the game was more people are going to do the expansion cubes, right? And I know that's something that I talked to at Eco, he was really excited about. And in my experience so far, I haven't found that level of engagement yet. So I just think some minor adjustments need to be made to make it more engaging for everybody and incentivize more people to go after that and make maybe that process a little bit easier. But I think overall, Talios was a good and needed improvement, especially for a section of players who like to go out and be more active in maybe areas like PvP and OPC hunting. And I know we have so many different communities when it comes to their rows, their rules of engagement, what's allowed, what's not. But I always think that updating old content is good. I do love getting new content. That can be a lot of fun, but we don't want to forget content that's already in the game and update that. I think that alone makes it a positive.
Okay, so we've had a chance to talk about your journey in the game, your journey into content creation, your journey with Star Trek in general, and kind of like moving forward in your next steps. But we didn't talk about the most important question of all of the day. Are you ready?
Yes.
What is your take on pineapple on pizza?
Well, you have to start this by acknowledging that Voyager is the worst Star Trek of the Star Treks. And then you take a look at pineapple on pizza and go, how could they be wasting that much material in the Delta Quadrant when apparently they're low on materials at all times? But pineapple on pizza is perfectly acceptable. It is a savory sweet combination. It is a culinary cooking device that has been done in so many different forms. Now, that doesn't mean you have to like it. That's completely okay. But also, a hot dog is a sandwich. So,
Okay, well, there you have it. Pineapple on pizza. It's fine, I guess, if you want it, and also fine if you don't want it. So, Rev, thank you for your wonderful insight to such a deep question. Rev, after today's interview, where can people find you?
Well, if you want to find me, you can find me on YouTube or Twitch. Now, I live stream on Twitch Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, which, thanks to DST, I think is -5 GMT for all of our EU friends. And you can also check out the YouTube channel. If you search Rev Deuce or if you search Star Trek Fleet Command, I will come up at the very top of the list. Come check us out. We're doing informative videos, funny videos, and every now and then taking out the old pitchforks and torches when needed to make sure we get things fixed in the game. But everybody's welcome.
Well, Rev, thank you so much for hanging out with us on this episode of The Briefing Room. And Commanders, thank you as well for taking the time to watch this video. We'll catch you guys next time. Live long and prosper.